Hey, good morning, COD students. I want to wrap up our last module, so module number 5. The short one should have been relatively short for Thanksgiving week. Appreciate your comments on the article. I wanted to point out a couple things from the article, or at least a portion that I particularly liked, was when the author talked about, he talks about we want to avoid getting into that state of fear, of being afraid. But that's not to downplay, the importance of all we're doing to battle this pandemic. So he talks about continuing to practice proper hand hygiene, avoid large groups, social distance ourselves, and then also, of course, wear a mask. But to do this not out of a state of fear, but to do it as he says here, as an act of service where you actually are preventing the potential deaths of more people, right? So you're doing it out of an empathetic state, right? We care for our family members, we care for our friends, but we also care for the family members, the friends of everyone in the community, right? So we're doing this to protect them as far as all the precautions we're going through. Again, I want to make sure that this article doesn't seem like it was at all downplaying what's going on with the pandemic. I think I have told you guys that I'm a physical therapist. I work inpatient, so not like many people often picture a physical therapist working in a clinic. I work inpatient, so I work in the hospital, and we have a couple floors at the moment that are designated for positive COVID patients. And as physical therapists, we take our turn going up to those floors and treating those patients. And I just want to emphasize that, this is, I don't think any of you are hopefully downplaying it, but it's a real situation. Numbers are unfortunately going up, and people are passing away or having serious consequences from this disease. So just continue to do what you've been doing. Hopefully you've been doing all the necessary precautions, and then, but again, do it out of the right state of mind, all right? Like the article kind of outlines. So let's look at our next module, which is module number 6. Yes, module number 6, getting the most out of our food environment. So when we talked about, habits or health goals you might have, a lot of people put down goals or habits that were related to diet or potentially like body composition, that type of thing. And this is kind of some quotes from a book called In Defense of Food. It says an Eater's Manifesto, and it's by Michael Pollan. It's a book that I like as far as when you're trying to read about nutrition and diet, because I believe the author simplifies things, which I appreciate. And as he outlines, his premise is somewhat that the science of nutrition is maybe not as far advanced, or maybe they don't know enough to make all the recommendations that are made as far as what we should and shouldn't be eating and the amounts we should and shouldn't. And that's why, you've all lived long enough to see, we kind of cycle through these patterns of, right, where, the food that's recommended is, a high protein diet, or, make sure you get your fats, or no, don't eat any fats, or, carbs are okay, or no, avoid carbs, no carb diet, that type of thing. And you'll see we cycle through these various diets or patterns of eating. So you'll be able to read it. I just kind of want to go through the assignment here. I have my computer in front of me. That's what I'm glancing at. You have 3 responses. So again, you need to respond to 3 topics or questions. You can do it all in one post, and it'd be helpful if you just did response 1, response 2, response 3, label them as such. You don't need to do 3 separate posts. Okay, so the first one, he has a couple just rules that he uses to simplify a healthy diet. He says if your grandmother wouldn't eat it or recognize it as food, then you shouldn't eat it, right? And the example I give is Go-Gurt, right? I know if I gave my grandmother a tube of Go-Gurt, she would, be like, what is this, right? Because it's not she would say it's not really food, right? It's something artificially created. If it has more than 5 ingredients, it's a test result, not food. And if it tells you it's healthy, it probably isn't, right? The example they give there is, when you walk into the produce section, there's not a sticker on the apple that says, hey, this is full of vitamins such and such, right? This is healthy. It's just an apple, and we hopefully know it's healthy. Whereas if you go to the frozen food aisle and you pull out a box of something, there's all types of health claims on that. And so his premise is if it is labeled as being healthy, you need to be a little bit skeptical. All right. And then so you're going to give a response to that. Just what are your thoughts on those rules, right? Do any of them speak to you? Do all of them speak to you? Do you disagree with some of them? And again, you're not graded on whether you agree or disagree. Just give your opinion. And then the next two you're going to respond to a couple quotes. Okay, so there's a quote that is first going to look at the idea of eating for pleasure. And so just, read the quote and give me your thoughts on is it healthy to eat for pleasure? Is it okay to eat for pleasure? And then the second quote ties into, like I mentioned, kind of the cycling through of what foods are. He calls them a savior type food, and then what type of foods are our evil foods, right, that we need to avoid. And we cycle through that. So the example I give, it was back in the 90s when I was an undergrad, and there was a woman, her name was Susan Powder, and she was on TV all the time, and she was touting the diet of high carb, no fat diet, right? So she would say, I remember her saying, you couldn't eat as much, you can go to the store and eat an entire loaf of French bread, just don't put any butter on it, right? So you can have the carbs, but you can't have the fat, right? So still avoid all fat. And if you think about now, right, that has certainly shifted since then. It's probably shifted back and forth a couple times, but now, a lot of people are going to be following this no carb diet. I don't eat any carbs, but I'll eat the fats. And I'm not saying one is right or wrong, but I think, again, you need to be somewhat skeptical when you see one food identified as the savior food. Oh, this food is magical. And then another food item or like a nutrient or macronutrient, such as, your fats, your carbs, and your proteins, as identified as evil, right? So again, just kind of give me your thoughts on that, and whether you've experienced this, the idea of certain foods or nutrients being identified as saviors or as evil. All right, and I'll keep this module open until midnight on Sunday, December 6th. We only have a few more weeks to go, so keep up the good work, and reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns. BK Fitzpatrick at collegeofthedesert.edu. Talk to you later.